Have you ever watched someone describe a fragrance like this? The opening has bergamot and pink pepper, then it moves into iris and cedarwood, and the dry down becomes creamy and musky. Tondet. And meanwhile, you're standing there thinking, what are they talking about? It just smells like perfume. Most people assume one of two things. Either fragrance experts are pretending, or they were born with some kind of superhuman nose. But neither is true. And once you understand what's actually happening, you'll start noticing smells completely differently. Because the real reason you can't smell notes yet has almost nothing to do with your nose. It has to do with how your brain organizes scent. Here's the first thing most people never learn. Your brain does not naturally separate smells into ingredients. When you smell a fragrance for the first time, your brain compresses everything into one emotional impression. That's why beginners usually describe perfumes like this. Fresh, sweet, clean, heavy, expensive, old-fashioned. Not because they're wrong, but because that's the fastest way for the brain to process unfamiliar scent information. Think about music for a second. If someone has never listened closely to music before, they hear the whole song as one thing. But musicians can isolate the bass, the drums, the vocals, tiny background sounds, not because their ears are biologically different, because their attention has been trained. Smell works exactly the same way. And here's something fascinating. Humans are actually terrible at describing smells, much worse than we are with colors or sounds. You can instantly explain the difference between blue and green, loud and quiet, rough and smooth. But smells? Most people say, it smells like something familiar. There's a scientific reason for this. Smell is processed through older emotional parts of the brain before language fully kicks in. That's why you can recognize a smell instantly, but struggle to explain it. And this creates one of the biggest misunderstandings in fragrance. People think perfume notes are literal ingredients floating separately inside the scent. Like, here's the vanilla, here's the rose. But that's not how perfumery works. Most of the time, you're smelling an illusion. For example, ocean scents usually smell nothing like the real ocean. Real ocean air can smell metallic mineral, like even slightly rotten because of algae. But perfumers aren't trying to recreate the actual ocean. They're recreating the feeling your brain associates with it. Openness, freshness, clean airspace. That's why fragrance is closer to storytelling than chemistry. And this is where things get really interesting. Recent neuroscience research suggests that smell is highly predictive, meaning your brain is constantly trying to guess what you're smelling before you consciously understand it. That's why context changes fragrance so dramatically. The same scent can smell luxurious in a hotel, cheap in a crowded store, comforting at home, overwhelming in a taxi. The molecules didn't change. Your interpretation did. So how do people actually learn to smell notes? Not by memorizing fragrance pyramids, and not by forcing themselves to find sandalwood. The brain learns smells through comparison. That's the key. Here's something you can try today. Take 2 citrus fruits, lemon orange, smell them side by side. At first, both might just smell citrusy. But if you slow down, you'll start noticing differences. Lemon feels sharper, brighter, thinner. Orange feels rounder, softer, sweeter. That moment, when your brain starts separating similarities, is exactly how fragrance training begins. Now do the same thing with black tea versus green tea, fresh basil versus mint cedar wood versus paper. Don't ask, what note is this? Ask, what does this texture feel like? Because experienced fragrance people don't smell chemically first. They smell structurally. They notice dry, creamy, airy, dark, sparkling, dusty. And over time, the brain starts attaching labels to those patterns. There's another mistake beginners make. They smell too many fragrances too quickly. Your olfactory system fatigues fast. After a few strong perfumes, the brain starts blending signals together. Everything becomes blurry, sharp, too perfumey. That's why perfume stores become exhausting after 10 minutes. Your brain literally stops processing efficiently. So if you actually want to train your nose, smell fewer things, but more carefully. And here's the most important shift of all. Stop asking, what notes are in this fragrance? Instead ask, what does this remind me of? Because smell is deeply connected to memory. That's how the brain organizes scent. not through technical charts, through emotional associations. And once you understand that, something strange starts happening. You stop smelling perfume as one flat cloud. And suddenly, you notice texture, contrast, movement, warmth, freshness, not because your nose changed, but because your brain finally learned what to pay attention to. And that's the moment people think, wait, I can actually smell the notes now.